What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. I'm recording this on Friday morning. CDL matches are starting today, so make sure you tune in to the watch party to check those out. But I wanted to, after rank play came out, after I played a lot of the new HARDPOINT rotations, talk about my thoughts on some of the changes and kind of let you guys know if I like them, if I don't like them, if there's some tweaks that need to happen. So let's go map by map in HARDPOINT, walk through what has changed and my thoughts on each of the new hills / new rotation. All right, so shout out to Breaking Point. If you go to their website, they have a article with pictures of all of the new rotations. We're going to start in the order they have listed with Karachi. So a few changes on this map. P1 is unchanged. P2 has been slightly extended. You can now contest all the way up from the backside of the hill. I would say I want to see what teams do in practice as far as like if you solo rotate, are they just going to kind of sit back there, play for no info? I think that's kind of a sketchy play. I guess it kind of makes this hill more mixy if people kind of get out dumpster from team one spawn. But I don't hate the change. I do want to see a little bit more in practice with challengers team if maybe the expanded zone kind of makes this a little bit iffy of a hill. But I think, to be honest, it's going to be hard to contest anyway because the team is set up. I mean, they got all the crosses from red, from mid alley, from AC, etc, etc, etc. P3 hasn't changed. The two hills that did change are P4 and P5, and let's talk about them. All right, so this is the new P4. If you remember, it used to be, if you see where it says 16 meters, used to be in that building around the corner. It didn't even fit the whole bottom floor of like that church building, whatever you want to call it. This is a new hill, and it's basically like a 5x5 square in the street, which I'm not a fan of these hills for a number of reasons. One is there's like zero cover to hold this hill from. There's like kind of an edge on both sides of this hop up that you could hold behind the barrels, behind the corner. You could also lay down like in the, the shop sort of alley over here by, again, where it says 16 meters. And you could kind of lie in the church corner, but you're a little exposed. People are coming out arch. Now, obviously, this is also super nadeable hill from both sides, and I expect teams to get really good at throwing nades at it. I just don't see how someone's going to accrue a lot of time on this hill. I think if you do, it's getting people trapped in those arches spawns, and it's people holding it from the team one spawn side. Although I have noticed that you do get an instance of people spawning behind each other sometimes on this hill with white time, so something to be noted about. I'm not a fan of this hill. I wish they had just done it in the original location and made the hill bigger. I don't understand why they moved to the street. I don't think it's going to make this play a lot better. And this is the new P5 over here by the sheds outside of red. It does not extend all the way to the back end of the sheds. It basically cuts through the middle of them, so you can kind of lie in between them. You can kind of lie outside the dumpster. You cannot sit behind the burned out cars in the white car you see they took this picture from. That's not necessarily in the hill, so a bit of an interesting one. I kind of actually don't think this hill is all too bad. There are a lot of ways I think to break this hill. I think floating out red will always be difficult. You can kind of spawn them, I've noticed, pretty deep. If you go mid alley like P1, you kind of spawn them sort of on the archer side of the map, and you can kind of cut and flank from that way. So I'll be interested to see once pro teams actually get their hands on it, which is sort of the preferred way to break this hill. They really like pinch from all sides type deal. But I actually think this hill could play pretty fun. My only thing is there's not really a lot of cover to hold this hill. It's not really head glitches you can lay behind. Both of these sheds can be wall banged pretty easily. So curious to see how people try to contest this in a mixy situation, how people try to hold it. But I do think this is breakable. I think there are a lot of opportunities to get into it. And right now I don't hate it. Obviously the original hill was in bottom red, and it wasn't that great of a hill to begin with because it was, it wasn't a street, but it was a small inside building hill. So those are my thoughts. So I think overall, I'm not a super fan of both, like in total, sum total, both these Karachi changes. In general, you're going to see with a lot of these hills, they changed. They kind of moved hills from being inside buildings to like outside on streets and alleyways and cuts. I think what they really need to do on this map was just make the P4 hill bigger. And they could have moved the P5 move. I actually don't hate, to be honest, but we'll see if the sum total of this makes Karachi not as fun to play, because I do think I especially hate the P4 hill right now on this map. I just don't see how it's going to play well with no cover. All right, let's move on. Invasion has seen a number of changes. P1, P4, and P5 are all new on this map. P2 still the same. You still get those same funky Palace P2 spawns that we all despise, and P3 still exists on the map. But I do think we'll get into hill sizes and my thoughts. I think the order of the hills and sort of the way that P4 plays to P5 to P3, I see the logic here, because there was a lot of changing from P3 to P4 because they were both on the same side. And obviously, if you remember, P5 was Palace Hill, and that hill just completely sucked. All right, let's go hill by hill. So this is a new P1. It's basically B-Dom on this map. There is cover that you can contest this behind the million dumpsters and recycling containers and garbage containers. You are very susceptible to nades. You're very susceptible from getting shot from both spawns. I don't quite understand the logic on their end of making this hill in this alley. I just don't get the logic in this game of like these small 5x5 square like hills. And I thought the old P1 wasn't always the best of hills because you know, there was the opportunity for someone to like spawn out and be on the pinch. You were kind of hemmed in unless you pushed out, but it was a money hill if you did get set up and kind of get a trap or a setup going. I feel like it's gonna be hard to get a lot of time on this hill unless you can spawn people like pretty deep, which I haven't yet seen a team be able to do. So curious to see how this plays. I'm not a super fan of this P1. I think off the rip, it's going to be like a pretty mixy hill because of the small size of this, the nades and positioning. So this is the new P4. It's basically the whole courtyard area. Basically anything inside the ledges of the courtyard is basically the hill. So there is some cover, but the problem is obviously the elevation of Palisade makes it difficult for you to have any laydown spots where you're not super exposed to Palace. Like there is these like concrete kind of cutouts you can maybe lie behind. The sort of stairs circle area, there is kind of angles that you can lay behind. You can even push up to the wall. As long as your team has a street cross, you can also like play pretty forward on this hill. I'm actually curious to see how this plays in practice because you would think logically that the Palisade team has an advantage here, but because the Palisade team gets those like P2 spawns, you can kind of get pushed up and kind of really cover the cross and kind of spawn trap well on this hill. And even if the Palace team is able to kill the guy at a hill, they've got to kind of clear all the angles crossing. So I do think potentially this might favor a team holding it from the front. I do think it's gonna be difficult for this to be a super money hill. I think the next hill might be more of a money hill, but I'm curious to see how this plays in practice. I don't necessarily super hate it. The Palace area makes it a little bit tricky to see how this will be like a super competitive hill. That being said, I think it is better than the old P4. I really hated the treehouse hill. I thought it was a pretty stupid hill. It was tiny. It was a pain in the ass to get up there to break. Again, a lot of teams would blow people out because they would just rotate P3 to P4. You get a 4 dead, you flip Palisade, and then basically put that team in a position to turtle for P5. I think this makes the map flow a little better than a team just rotating it like already trying to hold Palace spawns for P5. And this is the new P5. It's basically outside of Blue Street, all the way in the back by the excavator, whatever you want to call it. It is a pretty, I would say it is a small hill, but there's actually a decent amount of cover you can lay behind here, although some of the stuff is wall bangable like the pillars. But I think there's a hill where you can kind of set up, go top blue, get DVD alley, get DVD cross, and really be able to effectively hold this hill. That being said, I have noticed that the spawns on this hill are a little bit funky. I have noticed that people have the ability to spawn gas behind you. So people kind of understanding how to kind of block the right area on this map will be really key. Make sure you're always spawning them out front, because if you spawn them out front, I think you can hold a lot of time on this. You might be able to hold it Palisade, but you spawn so deep that I think the minute someone dies in that setup, they're inevitably going to break because they just spawn way closer. But I think you can theoretically hold it from both sides, although I think gas side's probably preferable due to the speed and the position I think you get off of spawn. Ultimately, I don't like super hate this hill, and I think it's better than the old P5. So anyway, my invasion thoughts, I think it's a mixed bag. I think they did some decent ideas here, but I do think P1 was a problematic change. I think it might overall make this map play better because P5 was such a drag on the function of this map, but it might be more of a side grade than it is a massive upgrade. The effective hardpoint rotations on the hill that existed before the patch. All right, Skid Row did not change, so we're not going to spend too much time talking about it. Still the same. They didn't change P2. It is what it is. Next up, we have Subbase. There are two new hills on this map, P3 and P4. P1 is not changed, P2 is not changed, and P5 have not changed in their locations or kind of how you play it. So P3 Subbase is basically the ramp, and it goes all the way to the box. Basically, if you guys know, there's sort of this like building kind of vent shaft over here, extends all the way to that. Although I have noticed that you can lay inside the ramp, probably about 3 to 4 feet away from the contested area of the point, and you can hold it. If you open the door right next to where it says capture, you can contest it as well from there. If you have the door closed, you can't contest it. Trust me, I tried to see if that was a cheesy glitch. You can't do it. So there's a bit of an interesting hill. Teams, when they spawn out, will come more from like the snow sort of dock side of the map. I think the way to break this hill is getting kind of top server control and kind of work in angles from there. Either if you're going to go straight up the top and try to gun someone that's holding the back of the spawn, or you're going to go from like warehouse P5 side. I think like flooding a ramp is always going to be a little bit difficult on this hill because it just ends up being a massive trade fest. So I'm curious to see where the skill gap is to break this one. But right now when I played it, it has been kind of a money hill just because teams don't really have a handle yet on how to break it. I would say that I thought the old ramp hill kind of sucked. I thought the playability on it kind of sucked. And I could see this being better once people kind of figure out how to break and spawn this one out. And next up is the new P4. And I actually really like this hill. It is not super big, but fundamentally I like that this kind of plays like an old school sort of hill. You spawn it, you know, the back spawn here is really good, but you can hold this from the front if you can get up top 3, if you can come through P2 and you can really either flip or kind of hold them in the back. If you're spawning out, it is a bit of a flood fest, but I do think that people are going to learn nades to kind of force people out of this hill, and it kind of reinforces sort of the need to get top snow top 3 on this map, which is super key. I really like all the hills. So I actually don't like hate this hill, and I actually think it's a really good money hill, and I'm very curious to see how teams play it. So I think overall I don't really hate the sub base changes. I think the old P3 hill, like the old like sub base hill P3 was so bad. The pre-patch run was also bad too, and ramp P4 hill wasn't a good hill either. So I think they've tried something new. I'm not totally convinced by the new P3, but the new P4 I think is really good, and it trades nicely space wise with P5. If teams want to chalk P4, they get control of P2, they get control of top snow server, and they force that team to rotate out. I think it might make this map a little bit more playable, less kind of blowouts, and maybe more even. So I actually think these were good changes. And last map is Terminal, and this one has seen the most changes. P1 is the old Book Hill, it's the old P5, but P2, P3, P4, and P5 have all undergone either new locations, adjusted hill sizes, or other significant changes. So let's dive in on what they've done on this map to kind of switch things up. All right, so as I mentioned, Book Hill is the same, so we don't need to spend too much time talking about that. This is P2. It is bottom eskies. It goes from the pillars all the way to the edge of the planter before the bar. I will say that playing this hill seems a little chaotic right now because of a number of reasons. One is there's not a lot of cover to really like hold and get time on this hill. I think you're super susceptible to nades. I think you're super susceptible to people going plane and being able to like angle things, the back windows. I think the spawns on this hill are also a little bit funky. I think in practice, if you could like really push this out and spawn them deep security like consistently, I think this is like a super good money hill because you can kind of control all the lanes. I don't think it always plays that in practice, and right now it seems like a little bit of a mixy hill. So I want to see what people do to kind of maybe make this less chaotic, but the terminal spawns are really funky on this one. So I'm not like super sold from the way I've played so far, but it has been like just been playing ranked in N8, so we'll see what pro teams do. There's the new P3, and I actually really like these changes because this original, which was old P2, was in just Dreams. Now they've taken it out of Dreams. They've extended it towards this ad board, and so now the front side of the desk coming from hallway is part of the hill, so you can theoretically like crawl your way across the front here and like contest and just stay down. I think it makes this hill kind of fun now because you can hold it from the front, you can hold it from the back. I think it makes it like way more even than say Book Hill, which is another like mid-map hill, and kind of forces teams to think about, especially with the back spawn, you know, how hard do we want to commit resources to this with 30 seconds left? We want to try and hold our security spawns for Burger Hill. I think it's going to make people think, and I really think it is one of those changes that will make this map less blowouty, especially if teams don't get a lot of time on P2. So the Burger Hill, which is P4, has now undergone a significant transformation. The burger side, like inside of, you know, the kitchen here, is still part of the hill. It extends all the way out to the pillars. So the like GA'd kind of bathroom cubby spots are now in the hill, and you can kind of lay down the pillar planter from the old P1 to kind of contest this one without showing yourself too back security. You could also kind of try and lay behind the trash can as well, but I think that's sort of a tricky spot. This one's kind of interesting because you can still kind of make a mess of this hill if you just kind of get behind the kitchen, because that angle's so hard to shoot if you're coming from top eskies, and you can really like effectively crossfire from in there. But I theoretically makes this hill more even because it was a bad hill before. It was a tiny hill. It's basically hit your nades, get the guy out of hill, and then like win all the trades. I do think this makes it better, but I'm not entirely convinced that this is still like a great hill because it ends up just being a square up crossfire situation and a lot of white time. So we'll see what happens with top challengers, AMs when they play next weekend, the pros once they get their hands on it. I'm not entirely convinced that this hill is like, it's better now, but I don't know if it's still like the kind of hill that we want in the game. And this is the last hill. It's P5. It's basically outside these freight crates. There's some decent cover to lay down and contest this. And I think you can kind of make this a pretty solid money hill if you get on the wing, get top AC, get those guys spawning security. And they got to really basically either get Eskies, AC, or plane control to really effectively break you on this hill. You can also probably break from low plane. I think there are nades you can probably figure out how to throw from the terminal. But I think there's going to be a new money hill because I think if you hold the bottom side here effectively, then have a good setup. I think you can really do a good job of finessing, switching sides around these crates, depending on where the pressure is coming from, and kind of hold this. I actually don't hate this hill a lot. I think it actually, the way I played it actually plays pretty fun. I could make for some mixy endings if we go down to P5s, though usually on this map with the old sponsors going down to like Dreams Hill or last P1. So look, I think they made a couple of the hills better on this map, but I also think they made, like, I don't really like P2. I think P4 is still kind of mid. I like the P3 and P5 changes. My feeling with Terminal is this, is I think right now, this would be the first map out of the pool if we're going to bring in, say, and I'll scroll down, like Rio, which is a map that just got released. I could see Terminal being the first map out. I don't think they made enough changes in my eyes to effectively not change my thought that this is the last map out. We'll see if once we get to the end of Major 1 and the pros really start having a conversation about the map pool, if this map stays, but I don't know if they've done enough to developers to really keep this one in the map pool. So in general, my thoughts is I think they made some good changes. They've made some questionable changes. I'm not really a fan in this game of the outside small hills with no cover. I don't know why that was sort of a big design philosophy for them this year. And I don't know why post-launch now they've moved a bunch of hills to try and fit that, because no one liked those type of hills when the game launched. And I think especially Invasion P1, I don't quite understand the logic on what they're going for with that hill placement. So we'll see how these play in practice. The amateurs will play them for the cup this weekend and for the first major open. The pros are not playing with these hills. They do not have to play on this patch until after Major 1. So you might see some pros thoughts. They're playing like ranked before Major 1. And I know a couple of them have said they're kind of iffy on it, but I don't think you're going to get their full opinions until they play enough on it, probably after the majors. So we'll probably do a rethink on this when we get back, whenever it gets back from Boston. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of each hill, what you think of each map. If you like to change, you hate to change, let me know. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.